Good afternoon. Welcome back to Discovering Truth. Today I wanted to talk about an episode of The Chosen that I was watching. Season, I think it was episode 6. And it was the part where Mary takes off. Something bad had happened in the previous episode and it triggered her, and so she went back to her old way of life. And she was too ashamed to come back to the Messiah. They sent out Peter and Matthew to go get her, and she came back, but she was too ashamed to even face him. We probably feel like that a lot. I know I feel like that a lot. I've been saved. I've been redeemed. I follow him to the best of my ability, but I still screw up. And every time I do, I feel ashamed. I feel like, what am I doing? Why is he even bothering with me? He should just let me go. But he doesn't. He loves us. He cares for us. He wants us to get better. And his salvation is better than any sin that we can do. Now, it doesn't mean we should be trying to sin. Of course not. But we need to know that we can always come back to him. I remember years and years ago, I had a dream that all of a sudden I was in front of him. It was just me and him. And all I could do was break down and start crying. And I fell to my feet, or fell to my knees, and I'm just crying and crying. And he lifted me up onto his lap, to where like my head's on his legs now, and I'm weeping onto his thighs. And I all I could say was, "I'm so sinful. I'm so sinful." And he just said to me, he says, "I know, my son. I know. It's okay." He cares so much about us. There's nobody that's never sinned. We've all sinned. We've all fallen short. So either he can save all of us because he's great enough to do that, or he can't save any of us. If he saves us and we fall back into sin, or we have that one sin we can't just can't seem to break even though we're trying, he can save us through that. We need to remember that. We can always come back to him. That's the important part, coming back to him. Because he can wash us clean. We can't wash ourselves clean. I can't make myself unsin what I've already done. But he can make it. He can make it right. So in that, it goes on into another part of the story. And there's a deeper connection there that I've seen this time. I've seen The Chosen so many times, over and over and over. But I'm seeing a different connection this time that I didn't see before. And I seen the connection because I wanted to talk about what happened later on in the episode. And now I see the connection because of what happened later on in the episode. So when you had the 12 tribes of Israel, the northern 10 tribes, they were sinning more than the southern 2 tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Remember Jesus said he came but for the lost sheep of Israel, or the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So that's the 10 lost tribes. They went into captivity first, and assimilated into the people. Now nobody knows who's of the tribe of Zebulun, who's of Naphtali, who's of Asher. We don't know because they got assimilated into everybody else. But the southern 2 tribes, Benjamin and Judah, Paul was a Benjamite, he says, but Judah was the main tribe, and they went into captivity later into Babylon. While in Babylon, they realized that, well, we had all the laws of God, and yet we still sinned enough that the Father forsook us. He left us and allowed us to go into Babylon because of our sin. We need to put up fences. And they wrote the Mishnah and the Talmud and added all of these extra laws, oral traditions, onto the commandments so that we wouldn't break them. The thought process was, like, the intent was good, okay? Hey, we sinned. Let's see what we can do to make it to where we won't sin. The problem is they elevated all those oral traditions up to the same standard that the Father set. So, as an example, say I put a law for my house that we're not going to waste money. And so, in the process of not wasting money, I'm going to say, well, so that we don't waste money, we're going to not go out to dinner. Okay? Because that's more expensive than eating in. So, and then I find out that one of my sons went out to dinner with his friends. Did he break the law? No. He broke a small rule that we put in place so we don't break the bigger rule, the bigger law of saving money. He broke a smaller rule, okay? But that's not the law. The law is we save money. The smaller rule we put in place was we don't go out to dinner. He broke that part. Just as people were breaking a lot of the oral traditions, the laws that the Pharisees and stuff put in, but not the main law that the Father put in place. Do you understand the difference? The Father doesn't look at the laws that we make up and say, oh, you're a sinner. If I go speeding, okay, Father's not looking down on me and going, oh, you're a worthless sinner. No, that's not one of his laws. There's 613 laws in the scriptures. Now, is it breaking the spirit of the law? Yeah, we should be obeying those in authority over us. I get that. But it's not breaking one of his commandments. There's a difference. I hope I'm making this come across right. So, but their intent was to do right. Their intent was to help people not sin. So then go to later on in this story, of this episode, I should say, they go to the part where their disciples are eating the heads of grain. So I'm going to read that. That's in Matthew 12. I'm going to read that and make some comments along the way. It says, at that time, Yahushua Jesus went on the Sabbath day through the corn, or it would have been wheat, and his disciples were hungry and began to pluck the ears of wheat and to eat. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. But he said unto them, have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and that they were with him, how he entered into the house of Elohim, God, and did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither, which that part's true, it's only lawful for the priest to eat it. There is a side theory I have that David might have been Levite, but adopted by the tribe of Judah. I can go into that on another day if you guys want to hear about that. All right, so how he entered into the house of Elohim, God, and did eat the showbread that was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priests. Or have ye not read in the law how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? They're working. Just like your pastor is working on, if you're a Sunday keeper, on Sunday, which is not the Sabbath. But even if you are a Sabbath keeper, you're in a synagogue. The head rabbi is working. Is he not? But he's not profaning the Sabbath because he's doing what he's supposed to do on the Sabbath. Oh, but I say to you that in this place one is greater. That in this place is one greater than the temple. But if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would have not condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord, is Master, even of the Sabbath day. And when he was departed, well, that part, he's Lord of the Sabbath day. He's Master of the Sabbath day, which means he created it. I can't be master of something unless I own it or I create it. He created the Sabbath day. So he's not going to change it. And if he's Lord of the Sabbath day, if he's Master of the Sabbath day, he's not going to switch it to Sunday that he's not master over. Anyway, and when he was departed thence, he went into their synagogue. And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered, and they asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? That they might accuse him. And he said unto them, what man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold of it and lift it out? How much then is a man better than a sheep? Wherefore it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath days. Then saith he unto the man, stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it forth, and it was restored whole like the other. Then the Pharisees went out and held a council against him, and how they might destroy him. So this whole scenario is the disciples are eating grain on the Sabbath day, and they're like, oh, they're breaking the law. Then he goes and heals this man, and he's like, oh, he's breaking the law. All because they were doing these things on Sabbath. There's only, and I'm not going to go to those verses, we can later if you're wanting to, but there's only 3 commandments on the Sabbath. Don't light a fire, okay? Don't buy and sell on the Sabbath, and don't do any work or cause your employees, manservants, maids, to do work. So if I own a business, which I do not work on the Sabbath, and none of my employees work on the Sabbath. Okay? If I have a gas stove. I don't use the stove on Sabbath. That's lighting a fire. I wouldn't start a bonfire, to go hang out with friends on the Sabbath. That's lighting a fire. I wouldn't start a campfire. Now if I was camping, I would probably keep it going from Friday all the way through Sabbath, but I wouldn't start a campfire on Sabbath. Okay? The other ones are buying and selling and working. Are you talking about buying and selling? I don't pay for things on Sabbath. It just says not to, so I'm not going to. Those are the only 3 laws that he gave us about Sabbath. It says nothing in here about not eating grain on the Sabbath. It says nothing in here about not healing somebody on the Sabbath. You can do good things for people on the Sabbath. I had a situation where I own a lawn care company. So someone needed their lawn cut on a Saturday only because they had some special event on a Sunday. If I go and cut that lawn for free, I wasn't making any money. And I was doing good on the Sabbath for somebody else. That would be an example. So, but what these guys are talking about is all the extra laws they put in place so that we don't sin. Again, good intentions, but the Bible says in a couple places, do not add away from the law. They were adding all these extra offenses, all these extra things so that we didn't break the law. And again, good intentions, but the Father says not to do that. So I'm going to go to Mark 7, because a lot of people have told me, or I've heard at least in Christian circles, that Jesus did these things on the Sabbath to show that he was doing away with it soon. Couldn't be further from the truth. Mark 7, he goes into an area where the disciples didn't wash their hands before they ate. You should do that, okay? It's a good practice. But the Pharisees made it a law that said you have to do that before you eat, or you're unclean. And ceremonially unclean meant you couldn't partake of the temple and different things like that. Now, there are laws in the Bible that talk about what things that make you unclean. But that was not one of them. That was one they added so that we don't sin. But Jesus, in fighting against them on that, brings up a couple scenarios. But then he says this line over and over and over in Mark 7. So verse 6, he says, He answered and said unto them, Well hath Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as it is written, Thy people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Not of God, of men. For laying aside the commandment of Elohim, God, ye hold the tradition of men, as the washing of pots and cups and many other like things you do. And he said unto them, Full well ye reject the commandments of Elohim God, that you may keep your tradition. And then he goes on, I think it's verse 13, he says it again, making the word of Elohim God of none effect through your tradition, which ye have delivered, and many such like things you do. So over and over and over, where Christians who don't know the law think that Jesus or Yeshua is trying to do away with the law, he's not. He's doing away with the extra traditions, the extra laws, the extra rules that they put in place, man put in place, so that we don't sin. Again, good intentions, we're not supposed to do that though. And if we do put things in place, they're not laws. They're guardrails, okay? It's okay if we break a guardrail because it's not one of the laws the Father put in place. Now, do the guardrails help us? Yeah, of course. As an example, if I'm an alcoholic, I've never drank in my whole life, but if I was, I probably shouldn't go to a bar. But am I breaking the law if I go to a bar? Of course not. Only if I go get drunk. But if I go to a bar and I can't stop drinking, okay, then you should probably not go to a bar. But again, that's not the law. The law is don't go get drunk. The guardrail is probably shouldn't go to a bar. But again, if you did, you're breaking the don't get drunk law. I hope I'm making sense in this. So again, he was always fighting against the traditions because they were elevating them to the same height as law. But now I want to go back and talk about the disciples eating the grain on the Sabbath day. Because there is actually a verse in here that says they were not breaking the law. Deuteronomy 23, very last verse, 25. So, the Bible gives descriptions of what is work and what is not, as far as it comes to working. So, I should look that verse up. I didn't think of it ahead of time, so I'll have to just tell you what it says. I'm not sure the reference, but there is a verse that says that in agriculture, part of the law is that you had to leave the outside perimeter of your field for the poor. They were allowed to come in and eat the outside of your field if they were poor and starving and didn't have food. That part was allowed by them. It was not breaking the law. It wasn't considered stealing. It was part that they were allowed. But they were not allowed maybe this is the verse I'm thinking of. Okay. So again, Deuteronomy 23, verse 25. Well, verse 24 and 25. I'll read both. When thou comest unto thy neighbor's vineyard, then thou mayest eat grapes till thy fill of thine own pleasure, but thou shalt not put any in any vessel. So if you're harvesting grapes, you're going to carry them in a container, right? So that you can process them and stuff. What it's saying is if you're just going through and you're just picking grapes off of the grapevine, that's fine. If you're putting them into a vessel, you're not harvesting, so you can take them back later and eat them at a later time. You're doing more than what you need for sustenance at that moment, okay? And then verse 25, when thou comest unto thy standing corn or grain of thy neighbor, then thou mayest pick the ears with thine hand, but thou shalt not move a sickle unto thy neighbor's standing corn or grain. So using the sickle is what makes it work. Using the sickle is what makes it harvesting. When the disciples were going through and just eating the heads of the grain, they weren't harvesting. They were doing what this commandment says. So part of me wonders, why did Jesus not just bring up this verse and show them, hey, the law says they can do that? But I think he was trying to show a deeper point and a better point that, look, we're supposed to be caring for the poor. We're supposed to be doing what's righteous, what's better for them, showing mercy to them, helping them out so that, hey, if I help out the poor, they don't need to go steal. That kind of thought process. And at the same time, trying to show them that their traditions are way off base and they're not the same level as the laws of the Creator. I think I'm done. I get started on some of these and then my mind gets racing and thinking of other verses and I haven't looked them up ahead of time. I'm not good at edit. I don't know how to edit. I'm not good at, it's all on the fly. So you're getting the real me as I'm thinking, as I'm processing all this, as I'm teaching it. So yeah, with that, like, subscribe, share the show, leave a comment, and I ask you all to have a blessed day.